Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World of Business. Now, the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mthuli Ncube, delivered the 2024 midterm budget review statement under the theme Consolidating Economic Transformation last Thursday. Professor Ncube also announced measures to boost demand for the ZiG currency, and one of the key measures is that government departments will now accept payment for goods and services in the local ZiG currency to help strengthen demand for the ZiG. To help us unpack the mid-term budget review, we're joined by the Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honourable David Mnangagwa. Honourable, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Salah.
Okay. Honourable, the review statement gives an update on fiscal and economic developments during the first 6 months of the year, as well as progress on the implementation of the 2024 national budget. Now, what trends can be taken note of for the past 6 months, looking at our macroeconomic and fiscal space?
No, thank you for that, Salah. I think before we go into that, it would be important to highlight a few factors leading to the midterm review, which is government's commitment to continue having people-centered and business-centered policies. So you'll find that as we track the trends, it is those that which afflict our people the most, which will then dovetail into the measures that came into place, as enunciated by the Minister in his review last week. So you'll find that our growth projections for 2024 had to be revised downwards slightly. In the December budget, we had a 3.5% GDP growth projection. This has been revised to 2%. The El Nino effect has been worse than we had anticipated, which means that our growth forecast had to be contracted a bit, though we anticipate that we're going to have a good winter wheat cropping season, and that might give some relief to some of our growth projections. So we might see a bit of an uptick if the season goes as anticipated, but again, we had to adjust downwards on that. That is on the GDP growth and our growth forecasts. If we look at inflation, since the introduction of ZiG, in the month of May, we had deflation actually negative 2.4%, which then slowed down to 0% in June. On the US dollar front, I think we had a inflation figures of 0.1% in May and a negative 0.3% in June, which shows a very stable environment, if you'll ask, at least since the introduction of ZiG. We'll also look at our forex receipts. If we are to juxtapose from last year, we've seen an increase of about 9.5%. Up until the month of June, which means that we have more foreign currency receipts. This means that we're having more exports, mainly due to your gold, agricultural products, and some of our manufactured products. And this is on the back of a drop in global commodity prices, especially in platinum, which shows that as a country, we are actually becoming more productive and exporting more. So this is indeed a positive. In as far as collections are concerned, up until the middle of the year, we collected about 36.5 billion ZiG versus an expenditure of about 38.9 billion ZiG. This leaves a deficit of about 2.3 billion ZiG, which has been financed through internal borrowings and balances carried over from last year. So in a nutshell, I would say this is the economic outlook and the general macroeconomic view that we have from January up until June.
So you speak of measures that were introduced or that were added to enhance the use of the local currency, and the review also proposes even more measures to ensure that the ZiG currency campaigns are more strengthened and people continue using the local currency. Now, the budget also proposes some measures that are going to be implemented in order to make sure that we continue experiencing this stability that we've seen to date? What are some of the measures that we...
So you'll find that the Minister in his review statement came up with a whole list of, I would say, strong measures to bolster the ZIG. Since the introduction of the monetary policy in April, Treasury has been going through a deeper dive of assessing how best, under the current environment, we can put in place fiscal measures. I would say the biggest that was announced by the Minister last week was a 50% payment of the QPDs. These are the quarterly payments dues by companies for corporate tax. What this will do is, for those institutions, corporates, companies that are earning US dollars in excess of 50%, they'll be required to pay 50% of their taxes in ZIG, which means that there'll be more demand for the local currency, just so that they can meet those obligations. Again, for those who are earning a larger part of their revenues in local currency, they'll still be able to pay in that proportion. So I will say this will go a very long way in creating demand for ZIG. This goes maybe to the more formalized section of the economy. I will say something that has become a game changer was the announcement by the Minister to have all presumptive taxes paid in local currency. Your presumptive taxes, ideally for your small to medium enterprises, and those who are informal can now come into the formal economy. So it didn't just end at an announcement of full payment in ZIG, but a revision of some of these presumptive taxes. So you'll find for your commuter omnibuses, for your informal traders, a whole list is on the schedule. Shows that there was relief for small businesses to allow them to enter the formal market and have a tax head that is not too punitive. So we do expect a lot more compliance from our small to medium enterprises and small businesses because the taxes are more affordable, and again, it creates more demand for our local currency. There were other measures such as introducing some dutiable customs tax that are strictly in ZIG. Another item which will come as joy for a lot of Zimbabweans is being able to pay for their government fees and charges in ZIG. So if you go to your Ministry of Mines, for example, your small-scale miners will have to pay for their licenses, their registration fees in ZIG, whether they bring their US dollars because they're mining gold and only receiving US dollars will not matter. They will still need to look for that local currency to pay for those taxes. Same goes for your local government, industry, for your inspection fees. A whole lot of government fees will be paid strictly in local currency, and these have been enunciated in an annexure of about 58 pages, which is available in the public. So you will find that this is going to go a very long way in bolstering demand for ZIG. As government, there's commitment that's been shown that it is our currency will be the first mover for demand in that currency. So there have been a whole cocktail of measures to make sure that there's demand for ZIG.
So in terms of performance during the first 6 months of the year, different sectors of the economy and ministries were allocated different budgets. Would you say that they've lived up to their full potential and performance, looking at the time that the budget was rolled out end of last year up until now?
We have what we call the Blue Book, which assigns budget items towards certain programs. And I would say up until the mid-year, end of June, we've had a budget utilization of about 44%. We have some ministries, some departments, some agencies that have met their targets. Others are falling behind, others have overshot. But again, we're still in the middle of the year. which means that there's 6 more months to be able to complete these programs and some of the projects for those who haven't. And for those who have overshot, there's still time to rationalize as well. So I will say that for now, we're in good standing. We're happy with where things are.
So, Honourable, lastly, before we close the segment, what lessons can be drawn from this review, looking at the fact that as a country and also as a region, we might be faced by calamities such as the El Nino-induced droughts? What does the government do in the event that happens? What lessons can be drawn from that?
I think what has become key this year and years prior, because we're coming from Second Republic was ushered in with a Cyclone Madai. Subsequent to that, COVID, and now El Nino, and lessons drawn from this year and from past experiences is that we have to find ways as an economy to have resilience domestically, because we are on our own. You'll find that a lot of the times when we're faced with a calamity, we have to mobilize resources internally. So this is a strength that we have to master, and this is one that we have strategically been aligning to. So you'll find that the mid-year review also coincided with NDS1 mid-review as well. So we realized that there's some projects that were lagging behind that need to be caught up, and that will be done in 2025. And it's going to be outlined in the budget strategy paper for 2025 as well.
We're joined by the Honourable Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honourable David Mnangagwa, who is helping us to unpack the mid-term budget review that was presented last Thursday at the new Parliament building by Professor Mthuli Ncube. To join us after the break as we continue with the discussion. Welcome to the second segment of this week's edition of World of Business, where we are joined by the Deputy Minister of Finance and Investment Promotion, Honourable David Mnangagwa, who is helping us to understand more on the mid-term budget review that was presented last Thursday by Professor Mthuli Ncube. Before we took a break, Honourable Mnangagwa made it clear that the government continues to implement measures to promote the use of the local currency. Now, Honourable, going back to the review, Treasury reported a 2.3 billion ZiG budget deficit for the first half of 2024, but assured the nation that the full-year budget is sufficient to cover government operations in the absence of other significant shocks. To what would you attribute this deficit?
So I will say the deficit is within the lines of what is projected. We had projected a deficit of about 1.5% of GDP. This year, we expect our budget deficit to be 5.6 billion ZiG. At our mid-year review, it is 2.3 billion ZiG. So it is in line with our expectations. And again, funding of this deficit is going to be a cocktail of crowding internal resources by issuance of government instruments. We're also in discussion with the private sector, capital markets, pension funds, to see within the government's programs, at least those with a higher yield and are more profitable, where they can participate. We are in an era and a time where government and private sector working hand in hand to make sure that we fulfill His Excellency's vision of a private sector-led economy. So you will find that actually more discussions and more engagements within policy making as well, and implementation, to make sure that we have full participation of those who are able from the economy.
The issue of debt was also cited in the mid-term budget review. I mean, looking at the fact that His Excellency Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa is going to be the chairperson of the bloc starting the 17th of August, do you think that's going to position us better as a nation in terms of negotiating our internal issues, for instance, our debt overhang with our international lenders?
The assumption of His Excellency as the chairman of SADC is a welcome development. It will give us as a country a larger voice, particularly around issues to do with these unilateral measures, coercive measures that have been put on our country and others as well. But on issues to do with debt, these are more bilateral. So you'll find that while the chairmanship gives us more presence within the region, we still have to talk to our bilateral creditors on a one-on-one. We also have a structured dialogue platform where a lot of the debt restructuring negotiations are going on, which is a process that is going to continue. So I would think that any event that gives us more visibility as a country is important. It shows that Zimbabwe is on the rise and is sticking to doing the right thing, and part of the process, especially on the debt negotiations.
Lastly, Honourable, Zimbabwe and the rest of Southern Africa were hit hard by drought, which destroyed crops and diminished water sources. How much has been cushioned towards the vulnerable from the adverse effects of the El Nino-induced droughts, and also what are the social protection programs is the government putting forward to assist the vulnerable?
The government has come up with a very mathematical and scientific response program to El Nino, which entails a three-pronged strategy of search and rescue, mitigation, and then building resilience. So you'll find that as far as social protection is concerned, we have the food deficit mitigation program, which is to supply grain to our rural, vulnerable people. The grain has been procured, it has been mathematically divided per household, and the distribution logistics have all been worked out. So true to his word, as His Excellency said when he announced the state of disaster when the drought started, that no one would starve. So the government is making sure this doesn't happen. But beyond the rural areas, we also have the serial cash transfer program. So social welfare has a list of vulnerables in urban areas where they get a transfer which they can buy your grains just to mitigate the hunger. We continue to have Fumvudza. For next year, I think we will have a better season as projected. This is part of the social protection, sort of to ring fence the earlier part of the year, which is not so good. Social protection programs such as BEAM continue. We've caught up on some of the arrears, which means that we will have a better administered BEAM program. That's your basic education assistance module, which ensures free learning for those vulnerable groups. So I will say that there are measures that have been put into place. We also subscribe to the African Risk Capacity Insurance and got a payout for $31 million US dollars. The minister launched that a few weeks ago. So this is something that is going to also go to our vulnerable groups.
We've come to the end of the second segment, but do join us in the last segment as we speak to different economists and business people at the Harare International Conference Centre, where the SADC Industrialisation Week is taking place. Stay tuned. Welcome to the third and final segment of this week's edition of World of Business, where we are here at the Harare International Conference Centre, where the SADC Industrialisation Week is taking place, running under the theme Promoting Innovation to Unlock Opportunities for Sustainable Economic Growth and Development towards an Industrialized SADC. There are several delegates and there are also exhibitors and business people that are here to showcase their products in as far as promoting Brand Zimbabwe is concerned. But before that, we are going to speak to the Senior Law Lecturer, Banking and Finance, Dr. Hamadziripi. Doc, it's a pleasure to have you again on the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice to have you once again.
Thank you. So let's start off by commenting on the midterm budget review that was presented by Professor Mthuli Ncube last Thursday. What's your comment with regards to that review and also looking at the aspect of taxation?
Thank you so much. We welcome so much the midterm budget review by the Minister of Economic Development, that's Professor Mthuli. There are a lot of positives or takeaways that we can see from the midterm review. For example, if you look at the aspects of taxation, whereby we are seeing that the presumptive tax will be taxed in ZIG. That is a positive move in that it will create a demand for the local currency. If you can check with all the countries, each thriving economy has to use a local currency. So that is very welcome. Also, if you look at the aspect of corporate tax, which will basically be paid in 50% local currency, that is a further aspect which will create demand for the local currency as well. And there are a lot of things that are in the budget that we may also want to look at. If you look at some of the aspects like financial inclusion.
Place as an economic player and also as a business person in Zimbabwe, what has attracted you to come and visit the HICC to witness the SADC industrialization?
This is an opportunity for Zimbabwean companies to come forth and showcase their products and services that that can open the Zimbabwean market. There has been some issues of late with respect to low exports, but this is an opportunity now for local, even manufacturing companies, even those especially who are in the ICT sector, to come and showcase what Zimbabwe has to offer. We are seeing a lot of companies that have come, as you can see, a lot of exhibitors that have come to showcase what they are offering, which is impressive. From what I was hearing that actually the demand has exceeded expectations, which is a positive. So these outsiders who are coming, our fellow neighbors who are coming here to see what Zimbabwe has to offer, they are going to go back with a positive news. They are seeing what we are offering on the ground, not what they see on other news channels. But this is what's happening on the ground. It is a positive move. I'm sure this will leave an indelible mark for Zimbabwe, especially on the economic side.
So I'm now joined by one of the exhibitors here at the Harare International Conference Centre, Gogo Kunaka, who is here to showcase your products. Gogo, thank you so much for coming to show us what you're making. Can you tell us the inspiration behind this craft?
Yeah, the inspiration behind this craft is I developed an interest in producing what I am calling and branding talking beads, where I specifically make a bead that will explain itself who is being represented in the artwork that I'm doing. Like now I am doing the 16 SADC country flags for the summit in Zimbabwe that is going on right now.
We've come to the end of this week's edition of World of Business. We managed to speak to the Honourable Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honourable David Mnangagwa, as he was explaining fundamentals surrounding that review. We also spoke to the Senior Law Lecturer, Banking and Finance at the University of Zimbabwe, Dr. Hamadziripi. We do hope that the SADC Industrialization Week will be a success, as there are so many business people and industry players that are here to showcase what Zimbabwe has to offer to the other regions. Do join us again on our next edition as we continue to give you more updates on the SADC Summit. Pleasant viewing.